Hello all and welcome to today's video. I'm Asmita, your IELTS mentor here at Vedantu, and I'm pretty sure you've been watching a lot of videos and shorts where everyone keeps giving you alternatives to certain words that don't say this. Instead of saying you're very hungry, say you're famished. Instead of saying you're very scared, say you're petrified, etc., etc. And you know that's a really bad trap to fall into because you're already overwhelmed with a bunch of things, and on top of that, now you're just frantically memorizing different vocabulary words to use in situations without actually going into the nuances of these words, without realizing that yes, there are synonyms in the English language, but they are not 100% replaceable. You can't substitute one for the other without changing anything else in the sentence. And because of this, a lot of times just by seeing a 30-second or 40-second video, you might think of a word as a synonym without realizing it's not even the same part of speech. It really can't fit into the sentence you're trying to fit it into. And alas, you become somebody who speaks incorrect English with no fault of yours. So here I am to tell you that you know what? You really don't need big words to do well in the IELTS. I know that memorizing vocabulary words can get very overwhelming and it just adds to your stress. You're already I'm sure IELTS is not the only test that you're preparing for. You're simultaneously trying to take as many other tests as possible to figure out your plans. And on top of that, just for this one test to get a decent band, which serves as a requirement, sort of thing that you need to meet. And it's not competitive in the sense that if you don't do your best, somebody else is going to take your spot. It's just for a test like this, you're spending so much time preparing like you would for, let's say, SSC, where you have a black book of vocab words that you just have to memorize the definitions of. That's the wrong way to go about the IELTS. And along with that, I'm going to give you alternatives that can enhance your answers so that you don't have to rely on big words, all right? So big words are a big no if you use them incorrectly. I'm not saying complex vocabulary is not going to make a good impression. I'm just saying overuse of very complicated words suggests that you have been memorizing those words instead of working on your English proficiency, and also chances are you're going to use a lot of them incorrectly. So steer clear of big words if you don't know how to use them. All right, here's the first example that I want to show you. I'm perpetually engulfed in a multitude of literary compositions. Now here, good thing is that there's no grammatical error. It's not like one word which was supposed to be an adverb has been used like an adjective or something like that. But the thing is, nobody wants to listen to this. This sounds obnoxious, it sounds unnecessarily complicated, and the examiner's just gonna roll their eyes and sigh in frustration if you throw this at them. The IELTS is an English proficiency test, which means it's testing your communication skills. I know I've said this a million times, but you really need to understand what that means. If you try to fit in as many complicated words as possible, and that's not how you talk naturally, then it's going to come off as extremely pretentious, that you are trying too hard to find a shortcut to doing well on this test. And that gives a very bad impression. Now, if you're someone who uses complicated words in their day-to-day vocabulary because you know you've been a voracious reader, you really love the language, you like playing with different words, the go-to example for this is being a Shashi Tharoor. When he does it, it doesn't sound pretentious because that's just who he is. He has cultivated this vocabulary all his life, and when he uses these words, it doesn't seem like it's something that he memorized a week ago. We know that these words are a part of his working vocabulary and he doesn't have to try very hard to come up with these words or find sentences around these words. Just like how I am talking right now, where I'm expressing whatever comes to my mind almost instantly to you, he does that, but with very complicated vocabulary. That's a skill set that he has. And when he uses it, it doesn't come off as fake. But when you or I do it, it comes across as extremely fake and pretentious. So don't do that. A better way of saying this is simply saying, I love reading books and I usually have one with me wherever I go. Now, not only does this help convey exactly what you're willing to convey, the examiner will also understand it. There are so many things here that the examiner is going to have trouble understanding, and the more you make the examiner use their brain, the more frustrated they're going to get. Conversation should flow. It should not feel tedious. It should not be something that frustrates the listener. Obviously, if you are at a lower Cephal level, and I've explained what Cephal level is many times in many videos, but if you're unsure, you can look that up. So if you're at a lower Cephal level, then obviously you're going to get frustrated trying to follow somebody who's at a higher Cephal level. Or if your reading level is that of, let's say, an average 8th grader, which is the sad reality of many people in India where we don't have a very high reading level. And if you try to read something that requires advanced knowledge of English, then you are going to get frustrated because you'll have to take a look at your dictionary every 2 seconds. That's not fun for anybody. The point of communication, one of the major things when it comes to communication, is for things to flow seamlessly and for there to not be roadblocks. When I want to explain something to you, I would try to do it in a way that you understand. You, my listener, understands. And somebody with a really good sense of English and fluency and communication can alter the way they speak depending upon whom they're speaking to. So if you are speaking to a child, you will use easier words. You will talk slower. If you're speaking to someone your age, you might incorporate contemporary slang into your language. If you're speaking to someone older, you will be respectful, you will be more formal. So the ability to adapt comes with acquiring a language well and becoming more fluent in a language. Now, with the IELTS, you need to think of the examiner as someone between your friend who's your age and a person who's older, in between. So you can incorporate some contemporary slang, you can get a little bit informal, but never at the cost of disrespect. Or never at the cost of respecting them. So you should not disrespect your examiner. Always treat them formally as you would someone who's older than you, but also somebody that you can communicate with and share with. That's how you need to think about your IELTS examiner. And obviously, if you are talking to someone like that in a conversational manner, then sentence number 2 makes a lot more sense. Because the IELTS is trying to test whether or not you can go to an English-speaking country and hold conversations with people. And because you're going to study abroad, that means that you're mainly going to be talking to 2 kinds of people. Students your age who are also there to study, and older people who are your professors. So interaction with people your age, people who are older than you, IELTS examiner, somewhere in that range, somewhere in the middle. So that's how you need to think about them. Regardless of who is in front of you, that's the way you should practice for the IELTS, and that's how you should treat them during the test as well. Now, the first one, the problem with it is that it uses a lot of different words that are not normally used for this situation, right? I'm not saying engulfed is a very difficult or complex vocabulary word. I'm not saying perpetually is very difficult. I'm not saying multitude is difficult. But the thing is, this combination of these words is unusual. It seems forced. It's like, okay, I have a simple sentence. How do I make it complicated? It's like you used the thesaurus for each and every word and came up with the most fancy and difficult sounding version. That's bad when it comes to communication. That might work in some contexts, but when it comes to pure communication, that is looked down upon, because your point is to make your thought as close to what it is in your head in words, in a way that the listener is also able to understand. The reason why we have complicated vocabulary words or we use complex words is because they give meaning to certain complicated feelings or certain emotions that we feel as human beings. You might have heard of this German word called Schadenfreude that is not translatable in any other language. It has a very specific meaning. This word gives a tangibility to a certain thought or a feeling that most human beings have felt at some point in their life, right? So that's the point of words, to be physically manifest thoughts. And so using the correct words helps you stay true to what you're trying to convey. And also altering your use of words depending upon your listener also helps them understand to the best of their ability what you are trying to say. That's what makes you a good communicator. I know this could have gotten a bit too complicated for a lot of you, but this is just the psychology of communication, right? If there are any words in your native language that cannot be translated to English, please do leave them in the comments for me, because there are many words in many different languages. For example, there's a word in Tamil, which is pavam. And I've never been able to find a good translation of the word pavam in English, because it gives meaning to a certain emotion, a certain feeling that no word in English is truly able to capture. So there are many words like that, which is why your lexical resource score in IELTS does not test whether you're using the most complicated word. It tests if you're using the most appropriate word for the situation, and the most appropriate word can be easy. In this case, these words are not the most appropriate to explain what you're trying to explain. Being engulfed means being overwhelmed, being completely taken away by something. In a literal sense, it could be engulfed by a wave, but it could also be engulfed by emotions. That's the natural way of using this word, right? So figure out how native speakers usually use these words and use them in the same context, which is why reading vocabulary books, and especially things like the Black Book, is going to be of no use for you, because there you're just going to memorize words without truly knowing how these words are used. Language comes with a lot of history. And so the best way for you to acquire a language, to get better at English, to prepare for the IELTS, is to simply listen to native speakers talk. It could be through YouTube podcasts, through podcasts on other mediums, news, YouTube videos, vlogs, literally anything. Make sure you pick quality content, because if you settle for, vlogs or something like that, then the people might be making grammatical errors that you would inadvertently pick up. So make sure you're looking for a little formal quality content, maybe debates, speeches, news, verified good podcasts. If you're interested, for example, in astrophysics and space, then Neil deGrasse Tyson has a great YouTube channel that I have been binging recently. So that's one recommendation for you that you can watch. So in whatever you're interested in, just find the best of the best in that industry. Chances are they have a channel on YouTube, and start following their videos. So this way you're also watching something you're interested in, learning more about something that you like, and also at the same time you are learning and slowly acquiring the English language correctly. So it's two birds with one stone. All right. So now, how do you sound smart without big words? Because we've realized now that big words aren't the only thing that make you sound eloquent and articulate and intelligent. It's using big words appropriately. So how do you sound smart without them? By using things appropriately. And the number one thing here that's going to help you out is linking phrases or linking words. Yeah, there are words here too. So these are, I've gone into a lot of detail with respect to linking words before, and I've also called them filler phrases, because not only do they help you transition, they also give you time to think about your thought. So here there are multiple uses of linking words. Number one is to transition between thoughts. Right? Second is to act as a filler that gives you time. And third is obviously to show mastery over language, because the fact that you know how to use these words correctly shows that you have spent a lot of time reading good material, like academic articles or good news articles, essays, especially, like thought essays about social issues, anthropology, sociology, psychology, right? So because they are a huge part of formal writing, showing this shows mastery and effort being put into learning the language. They act as fillers to give you time, and they help you transition between thoughts so that your thoughts are not very jumbled and all over the place, and the listener or reader can exactly understand what the structure of your argument is. Some examples of these linking phrases are listed here. To be honest, what I mean is, actually, that's a good question. At the end of the day, one thing I've noticed that is, and this is not an exhaustive list, that means there are many, many more. Feel free to drop them in the comments for everybody else to listen or to read as well. Listen, it seems. Okay. Now here, how do you use them? For example, if I were to pick one randomly, I'm suddenly asked by the examiner that do I use the internet often? Then I would say, to be honest, I use it all the time. I can't imagine my life without the internet. And then the follow-up question from the examiner will be, do you think the world would have been a very different place without the internet? And then I would say, you know what, that's a really good question. I haven't thought about that much because I've grown up with the advent of the internet. But obviously, I will say that yes, the world will be a very different place without the internet. At the end of the day, it's the internet that has made us so connected, made many parts of our life so much easier, etc., right? You get what I'm saying. So there are different ways of using these. And you can understand how to use them by watching the video that I made about linking words and phrases. You can find that on the channel. If you're new here and this is the first video you're watching, I recommend you go through all the videos in the channel to get a full comprehensive overview of what the IELTS is like, and you will find this video a lot more beneficial once you do that. All right. Next thing we have is to give mini examples instead of just statements. I have said this over and over again that you cannot just answer in one word. You cannot give very brief, curt replies, even if that's how you normally talk. So just yes or no answers don't work in the IELTS. You have to show the examiner that you have the ability to express your thoughts, and for that you have to make a little bit of an effort. How you can do that is to give mini examples. Once you state something, add to it from something, add to it from your own life experiences, right? So if the examiner has asked you about your favorite hobby, instead of just saying, I like painting or I like to paint, you can say, I like painting, especially landscape. So here you've made a statement, then you have added a specific detail, right? Now, is there anything too difficult here? Anything too fancy that you can't understand? Absolutely not. Everybody knows what landscapes are. Okay, then you go ahead and give an example or an instance or an anecdote from your own life, right? That last month, I tried painting a mountain scene from a photo I clicked during a trip, right? So that's a very easy way to bolster your answer, enhance it, add more meat to it without using fancy vocabulary or big words, right? This shows that you understand the question and its implications. Pay attention to this. The point of the questions is not to know you factually. It's to understand whether you can really look through the factual details of a question and figure out why something is being asked, right? So not always while communicating do we specifically ask everything we want to know. Sometimes what we want to know is implied, right? For example, if you want to ask a girl or a boy out on a date and you ask them, so what kind of food or what kind of cuisine do you like? Now, it's implied that the reason why you're asking them this is because you wish to take them out on a date and you would prefer to take them to a place where that particular kind of food is served, right? Now, you won't, in a normal circumstance, go out of your way and say, hey, I like you. I want to take you out on a date, and so I would like to know what kind of food you like to eat. While that is, some people do that, that's fine. It kind of comes across as too strong, too forward. And generally in these kind of delicate situations, you always imply things. And that happens in many different circumstances. A lot of our conversations have a lot of implied things that are not explicitly stated. So the examiner also wants to understand if you get that and you are able to go one step ahead, understand what they're trying to imply and answer. For example, if you like someone and you ask them what kind of food do you like, then they will go out of the way to tell you that, I really like Mexican food. In fact, there's a restaurant right around the corner that I've been wanting to go to for a very long time. I've heard great things about it. So I didn't have to give that extra information, or the hypothetical person didn't have to give that extra information about the restaurant that's recently opened, that's gotten good reviews. But they went ahead and did that because they understood the implications of that question. You need to kind of think in the same way, along the same lines during the IELTS test. If an examiner is asking you what your favorite hobby is, they just don't want to know what it is and write it down. They want to know more about you as a person. So if you give mini examples, if you tell them more things, then that serves that purpose, right? You are one step ahead of the examiner. Maybe the next question that the examiner would have been, what is something you painted recently? But you've gone one step ahead and answered that for them. So they can now ask you a more interesting question. So you are also creating that scope to have more meaningful conversations during the IELTS. That also shows your range, what you are capable of, right? So here, always, and remember I've told you this for part 1, a good ballpark is maybe 2 to 3 sentences. Part 2, you have to talk for 2 minutes. So that's just yap. And part 3, you can go for 4 to 5 sentences to really flesh out your ideas. Okay? So this is a good ballpark, and don't go on and on in part 1, but remember to add just a little bit of who you are to your answers. That leaves a very good impression, and that entirely makes up for no use of big words. Okay? Next, we have use emphasis words for nuance, okay? Like I told you how many things in conversations are implied, there's also another huge part of a conversation is how deeply you feel about something. So it's sort of a range. Even if I say yes to something, for example, do you like watching movies? That's the question. Even if I say yes to something, I might be someone who casually likes watching movies. I might be someone who's a die-hard movie fan, right? So there's a range to this. I could be anywhere from, I casually like going out and watching a movie, but I don't feel too deeply about films, to I am a die-hard movie buff. Ask me about any movie. I can tell you the details. I can tell you about the cast. I can tell you the story. I also collect, like, for example, if I'm a die-hard Harry Potter fan, I have all this merchandise based on Harry Potter. And so you can fall in a range, right? It's not just yes or no. It's more nuanced than that. And a good communicator expresses that nuance, okay? So these are some words that you can use to emphasize things so that you can show that nuanced part of your personality, right? So literally, even though the actual meaning of the word is not metaphorically, but literally, it's also very common to use literally for emphasis, right? So I was literally starving. That doesn't mean that I'm trying to tell you that I wasn't metaphorically starving. That means that I was so hungry that I want you to know just how hungry I was. I was literally starving. She was literally crying her eyes out. Obviously, she's not literally crying her eyes out. That's not physically possible. But the word literally here is showing emphasis, right? And native speakers use this a lot for emphasis. So this is a different way of using a word. And if you show the ability to understand that I know this is not correct going by the definition, but this is how many English speakers, native English speakers use this word. And I also have the ability to use it like they do. Okay, so you are showing here an advanced hold on the English language, just like a native speaker has. Basically, honestly, even, just, sort of, kind of, especially, particularly, and add like words like not really on the list to show the other side. Okay, so these words can help you fall somewhere in this range for different issues and different kind of things. Next, we have varying your sentence structures. So we have three main kinds of sentences in the English language. Okay, simple, compound, and complex. You don't really need to know the difference between these two. It's just a very small technicality about the kind of conjunctions that we use. But what you should know is that using these sentences enhances your responses. And if you just stick to simple sentences back to back, you're showing a very low level knowledge or acquisition of English. You're not able to show the examiner that I can play around with my sentences, I can make longer sentences, I can use different grammatical tools to express my ideas in a more interesting way, right? So vary your sentence structures. Don't just stick to simple structures back to back. But having said that, definitely add those simple sentences in between so that everything doesn't sound unnecessarily complicated. It's like making a salad. If you add too much lettuce, then it's tasteless. But if you remove lettuce altogether, there's no crunch, there's no freshness, there's nothing to hold the salad together, right? So simple sentences are like the lettuce in your salad. Obviously, other interesting things that you add are the other kind of vocabulary words and grammatical tools that we've discussed. But don't just find that right balance in your sentences. Too complicated, too easy, steer clear of being extreme. That works in life, that works in language as well. Now here, you can use a mix of these sentences. You can see here, I enjoy music. That's a simple sentence. It's just one thought, one independent clause. While I enjoy music, I usually prefer instrumental tracks when I'm working. Now this shows a more layered kind of a thought when you have a dependent clause along with an independent clause. Conditional sentences are a great addition. If I had more free time, I'd definitely learn the piano. Now here, you need to be able to use the conditional sentences in a grammatically accurate way, for which you need to know your zero, first, second, third conditionals, which is not too difficult. I will make a video on that very soon that you can check out. So conditionals definitely add a lot of weight to your responses, shows your ability to think beyond what has transpired and your ability to imagine hypothetical scenarios and what you would do, right? So it shows higher order thinking. Conditional sentences are a great addition. And of course, correlative conjunctions are also good, not only but also either or, neither nor, all of that you can add to your responses. Show that you can use different kind of sentence structures. Another thing that you can add here are inversions, inversed structures, all right, which I will again make a video on to explain in more detail. And then finally, I think this is the last thing we have to discuss. Yes, so the fifth and the final thing in the list is to use phrasal words plus common idioms. Again, not talking about memorizing obscure, difficult sounding idioms, just your run-of-the-mill, very regular stuff. Incorporate that into your vocabulary and that will make a huge difference. Phrasal verbs, I know, is a difficult concept for new English learners to grasp, but the more, like I said, if the more you listen to native speakers talk, you will automatically pick up on these things. And see, I, while talking to you, without even realizing it, use some very common idioms, run of the mill, pick up this. So you will also be able to do that once you expose yourself again to a lot of English content. And never underestimate smart everyday language. Just because it's everyday language, just because the common folk is using it, doesn't make it less impactful. You are meant to sound like the common folk of English speaking countries, right? So here, some examples are pick up a skill. For instance, when I spent 2 months in Spain and I picked up a little Spanish, and that got me interested in learning the language in a lot more detail, and that's when I took my first Spanish course. So you can pick up a language, you can pick up any skill, like pick up, I don't know, thinking of a weird skill that I don't usually mention because I'm bored of cooking and some instrument. What's a weird skill that somebody can pick up? Leave that in the comments. If you can think of something really out of the box, weird, not your usual cooking, instrument, language, then leave that in the comment. Next is figure out, that I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do. So even though it's very simple, very casual, very everyday, it shows that you know these phrases are used by native speakers. That means you can communicate like them. You're watching a lot of content that those people are making, so you're ready to fit right in with them. Make the most of any situation, make the most of this, make the most of that, of a situation or a resource, right? Run out of time, it slipped my mind. So any such phrases or idioms that you listen to, try to note them down. Try to also note down the context in which they were used. Another thing that I've told you in the past, and I'll tell you again, is to make use of AI for this, where you can just plug this in and tell ChatGPT to use this in different contexts, and ask for 5 to 10 examples, anywhere from 5 to 10 examples, so that you can actually see the varying use of this idiom. And the thing with phrasal verbs and idioms are you can change them according to number and according to tense. You can break some of them apart in different ways. Some of them you can't break apart. Some idioms you can use, you don't have to say the full thing. You can use it in half as well. Others won't work like that. So make sure that you're looking at 5 to 10 examples at least to understand the diverse use of this idiom so that you can incorporate it into your answers. Don't try to form your answers around an idiom. That will never work. Just once you have formulated a response, try to think where an idiom can fit in. And obviously, you need to do this while you're practicing, because in the actual test, you cannot revisit your answer. Once you've given your response, that's it, that's over. You can't say, wait, can I say that again in a better way? That's not going to fly with the examiner, right? So use this, make use of this practice time to really go back, edit your answers, record yourself, listen to yourself, give yourself feedback and criticism. Flag the things that are not working. For example, if your fluency can be better, then write that down. Figure out a way to work at it, then record yourself again, see if there's an improvement. That's how you will get better at speaking. There's really no other way, okay? All right, now that we've gone through the list of everything you can do to sound fancy without using big words, here are just some demonstrations of that. So if a question like this comes up, what do you like to do in your free time? A very bleh response would be, I like watching TV, I watch Netflix. What are these? These are two simple sentences back to back. No real life examples, no linking phrases, no other different type of complex sentence structures. Basically everything that we've discussed. What else? No emphasis for nuance, right? So it's very bleh, very meh, not impactful. Instead, you can say, in my free time, I usually unwind by watching Netflix, mostly documentaries or dramas. It helps me relax after a long day. So here you have varying sentence structure, you have appropriate, not difficult vocabulary, right? And the answers flowing well, it's very personal, it's showcasing what you do in your free time. So this is a lot more impactful than this. And again, please note that no big fancy words were used here, and yet this is a very model band 8, band 9, high band answer, right? Another example is, what's your opinion on public transport? Again, this is a little difficult in terms of like categories of questions. It's not about your life, but you can still talk about your experiences. Even in questions like these, you can talk about your experiences, about how you use public transport a lot, how it's made your life easier. In college, it saved you a lot of time and helped you navigate both studies and working at the same time. So you can give examples from your own life. You don't have to, but you can. But again, these are more generic questions. These are harder to answer because they require some sort of critical analysis of a particular thing. Again, here it's good. Many people use it. Very bland response. Sentences are too simple. The thought hasn't been fleshed out. It seems like the person who's said this hasn't really thought about it and just wants to get done with the question. You really need to show your ability to be able to think about different things and express your opinion, right? You want to be a good thinking member of society and not just another liability, okay? So how can you showcase that through language? Again, to be honest, I think public transport is what sets apart a world-class city from an average one. Good public transport is a blessing for both residents and tourists. It makes life so much easier for everyone. So again, here, no difficult, complex words. Very simple. You have your linking filler phrases. You have some varying sentence structure, appropriate vocabulary, world-class city, average city, nothing too complicated. It's a blessing for both residents and tourists, makes life so much easier, right? Instead of saying it's good because many people get to use it, you're emphasizing so much easier, right? So you really feel deeply about how convenient it makes your life. So you're really stressing on it. Makes life so much easier. Okay? So that's how you formulate a good answer. So see, you really do not need complicated vocabulary words to enhance your answers. You can do that simply by following these tips that I've shared. I know I went into a lot of detail about the history and psychology of language, but that will really help you streamline your thought process. Right now, you are watching a lot of content that is essentially useless for you, and it's just going to derail you. Most of it is incorrect and wrong and done for like cheap likes and views. And once something blows up on the internet, nobody cares to fact check it. And even the uploader of the video doesn't really care about your success, is not invested in your journey. So you need to really think about what's value addition for you in your life and follow that kind of content. And if you do think this content is adding value to your journey, then please consider subscribing, sharing it with your friends, liking the video, and follow us on all our socials so that you don't miss out on any of the updates. I will see you again soon. Till then, take care, bye-bye, keep practicing, and keep speaking in English.